everyone, it's Katrina. Number 10. MohenjoDaro. The city of MohenjoDaro, located in Pakistan, was once the capital of an extraordinary early civilization. This city was built at the dawn of civilized humanity, around the year 2500 BC. It grew to be the largest settlement of the Indus Valley civilization. This city beat out its contemporaries in ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, Crete, and on the other side of the world in South America. Its builders were some of the first people in history to create a city using a planned street grid. This was a major revolution in urban planning. MohenjoDaro was truly one of the first modern cities 4,500 years ago. The architects created an elaborate drainage system to help with waste disposal. They were able to control water to help with agriculture and keep their citizens healthy. Even more mysterious is that nowhere in MohenjoDaro have archaeologists discovered palaces, temples, or religious monuments. There appears to have been no religion here, and no central seat of government for a ruler. There doesn't even appear to have been a ruling class. These people prospered without a king or queen and without a religion telling them what to do. Sadly, though, their civilization only lasted about 600 years. By the 19th century BC, MohenjoDaro was abandoned. We still don't know what happened. However, many researchers theorize that because they lacked a formal government and because they never went to war, another rising civilization violently wiped them off the map. The city was lost to the desert sands and only discovered in 1911. A few small excavations happened throughout the 1920s, but it wouldn't be until the 1960s that modern archaeologists truly started investigating the lost culture. Number 9. Discovering the Maya. John Lloyd Stephens and Frederick Catherwood were the two brave explorers behind the discovery of the ancient Maya. They didn't merely discover a lost city, they identified a lost people and brought attention to them on the world stage. John and Frederick traveled throughout Central America from 1839 to 1842, documenting their travels from one abandoned jungle metropolis to the next. They fought their way through hundreds of miles of inhospitable jungles. They suffered unimaginable humidity, sweltering heat, and rain that threatened to tear their skin off. They were thwarted by a civil war, hostile enemies, and wild animals. They even had to contend with malaria, flesh-eating parasites, and insect bites. They were the first English-speaking people to ever venture into many parts of Central America, and they themselves met real descendants of the Maya who still spoke their ancient language. This was really the golden age of exploration, when it was still possible to travel to uncharted lands. John and Frederick first discovered the Maya ruins of Copan in Belize, back then known as British Honduras. They then traveled through the jungle and documented the lost cities of Palenque, Quirigua, and Uxmal. By the time they finished, they had documented a total of 44 ancient Maya sites, many of which had never been seen by foreigners before. Number 8. Helique. In the year 373 BC, there was a catastrophic earthquake that shook the lands around the Mediterranean Sea in Europe. At the time, the Greek city of Helique was positioned on the southwest shore of the Gulf of Corinth. The city was so close to the water that when the earthquake caused a tsunami to sweep over the city, the whole place was sucked into the ocean. The city slipped into the water, it was covered in silt, and completely vanished. Ancient Greek writers believed the people of Helique had somehow angered the god Poseidon, who retaliated by plunging their city into the sea. For a long time, no one truly knew if Helique existed, or if it was just another story like the fabled lost city of Atlantis. Professor Spyridon Marinatos believed the stories to be true. He believed that when the city was discovered, it would be even more impressive than the discovery of Pompeii in Italy. He was quoted as saying Helique would be the most spectacular archaeological discovery ever made. In 2001, researchers finally found something. Buried underneath the ancient deposits of an old lagoon, they found evidence of an early Bronze Age town from 2400 BC. But this was 2,000 years before the sinking of Helique, 20 centuries too early. It would be later that same year that Helique was finally found, confirmed by a layer of cobblestones, roof tiles, and pottery. The biggest shock wasn't the discovery of Helique itself, but the revelation that many cities on the same stretch of coast had been sucked into the ocean over the past 4,000 years. Number 7. Hvalsi. Hvalsi is on an island near Greenland that's home to one of the best preserved ancient Norse ruins in the region. The ruin is known as the Eastern Settlement, or by its much longer and harder to pronounce name, Estiribijo. It was put on the UNESCO World Heritage List in 2017. This was over 1,000 years after it was established by the uncle of Eric the Red, who was the one who discovered Greenland. He was called Eric the Red because he had red hair and a bushy red beard. It was his uncle who arrived at Greenland's southern tip, traveled to Hvalsi, and built a small Norse settlement in the 10th century. We don't know much about the place, only that it was a small farming community and an important trading hub for Norse merchants. Archaeologists discovered 2 stone great halls, about 14 ruined houses, and a shockingly well-preserved church house. The last documented event that occurred at the settlement was in 1408, when a wedding took place at the church. Nobody knows what happened in the years that followed. Over the next 2 centuries, the Norse settlements in Greenland slowly died. It wasn't until 1721 that an expedition led by the Danish missionary Hans Egede found the Norse colonies in Greenland abandoned. When Hans showed up to check on the colonies, he found their buildings destroyed and the people long gone. And now for number 6, but first it's shout-out time! Big thank you to Francis Stephen Peralta and Courtney Johnson for supporting this channel. If you are new here, welcome, and be sure to hit that subscribe button for more videos about amazing discoveries. Number 6. Tikal. The lost Maya city of Tikal was first discovered by the Spanish in 1696. Spanish friar Andrés de Avendano was fleeing hostile forces and trying to make his way to Mérida in Mexico when he and his group came upon a mysterious city in the jungle. In his chronicles, Andrés described a place of vaulted houses, whitewashed plaster walls, and all the fixings of a forgotten jungle metropolis. It wasn't until 1848 that the first official report on Tikal was made, when the Guatemalan government visited the ruins and spent 6 days there. Since then, there have been extensive studies on this ancient Maya city. Curious anthropologists camped in tents and lived among the ruins in the early part of the 20th century. In more modern times, archaeologists performed excavations and even scanned the nearby jungle with lasers to discover even more hidden cities. In its heyday, Tikal was home to about 60,000 people living in the Maya lowlands. This part of Guatemala was such a densely forested area that even today it's one of the largest tracts of rainforest in the world. People established their city here around 600 BC and prospered for just shy of 1,500 years. The city grew up and out with an estimated 30,000 commoners living in the rural surroundings and surviving off the jungle. But by the year 900, things went sour. The inhabitants abandoned Tikal in the chaos during the collapse of the Maya Empire. We still don't know what happened, although some scientists believe it was a drought that caused cities like Tikal to run out of food to feed its people. Without sufficient food, Tikal devolved into anarchy and violence. Number 5. Sarai Batu. Sarai Batu was the capital of the Golden Horde that spread across northwestern Asia and Eastern Europe between the 13th and 14th centuries. The ruins of the city are closest to the modern city of Astrakhan in Russia. Back in the 13th century, when the city was founded by the Mongol ruler Batu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, it was truly massive. With a population of around 75,000, it was likely one of the largest cities in medieval Europe. Sarai Batu was also right in the center of the Mongols' vast empire, which stretched across almost all of Eastern Europe, Siberia, and into the Iranian territories as well. Historical accounts from travelers who visited the city in the 13th century show Sarai Batu described as one of the most beautiful in the world. It was overflowing with people. It included towering mosques and cathedrals and had colorful bazaars and bathhouses. And it was highly multicultural. People here were European, Persian, Egyptian, Greek, Asian, everything. By the 14th century, though, the Mongols were starting to lose their grip over the land. As this happened, the city was slowly abandoned. The Crimean Khanate sacked Sarai Batu at the end of the 14th century, and even though it was rebuilt, Ivan IV of Russia came to totally destroy it in 1556. The city was lost, yet never forgotten. In the second half of the 18th century, curious archaeologists began digging around for its ruins. By the early 19th century, Sarai Batu and other Mongol cities had been dug up and rediscovered. Number 4. Tuga. Tuga was a small Carthaginian settlement in North Africa before becoming part of the Roman Empire. It was first settled in the Bronze Age by primitive humans and later conquered by Agathocles of Syracuse in the 4th century BC. It became a thriving Numidian town at the border between Carthage and Numidia, and later came under Carthage's ownership. But it didn't matter who owned it, because after Rome defeated Carthage in the final Punic War of 149 to 146 BC, Rome took control of Tuga. Romans sent their own people to rule over the few surviving Numidians and Carthaginians until it just kind of became part of Rome itself. By the 3rd century AD, Tuga had become its own unique town occupied by new Christians. It was fortified later by the Byzantines. Archaeologists have identified numerous buildings suggesting a rich and complex culture by the time the city was finally abandoned many centuries ago. It was complete with Roman temples, Egyptian-style structures with pyramid-shaped roofs, great amphitheaters, Roman baths, and private villas. Number 3. Ebla. Not far from the city of Aleppo in Syria is the largely unknown Ebla. It was originally an important city-state starting around the late 3rd millennium BC. It was in Ebla where archaeologists uncovered one of the most important pieces of Mesopotamian history. They found 17,000 preserved cuneiform tablets, like an ancient library written in stone, from 2250 BC. They were written in ancient Sumerian and a previously unknown language called Eblite. These tablets help scientists to decode the language of the Sumerians and better understand their culture. It was around the time the tablets were created that Ebla reached its height. This city grew to be a major economic center and one of the first fully democratic places in the world. Kings were elected in this city, unlike most other places where they ruled through succession. At least that's how things worked until King Ibrahim wanted his son to rule so badly that he changed the laws and became a dictator. This led the city-state down a path that would see their demise around the year 2200 BC. The emerging Akkadian Empire destroyed Ebla, in part thanks to their weak leadership caused by the collapse of democracy. And although Ebla was later rebuilt, it was destroyed yet again by the Hittites. It was reduced to little more than a dusty desert village. Then it disappeared completely by around the year 700 AD. It wasn't rediscovered by modern archaeologists until 1964. Number 2. Napata. Napata was a city built at the edge of the Nile River in North Africa. It was part of the ancient kingdom of Kush, the southern neighbors of the ancient Egyptians who lived in what is now Sudan. The area used to be called Nubia. In the 16th century BC, Napata was the southernmost settlement in Egypt. It was the greatest distance south that the kingdom spread. But by 750 BC, the city was out of Egypt's grasp and belonged solely to the Kushites. This lasted until the city fell in 663 BC, and the new capital of the Kingdom of Kush was moved to Meroe. But because of its position straddling both worlds, Napata had a very special place in both Egyptian and Kushite society. It was considered a holy land, with the hill of Barkal regarded as the seat of the god Amun. There are still multiple temple ruins found around the base of the holy mountain, and even artifacts left behind by pharaohs such as Thutmose III and Amenhotep II. Even after Napata was lost to the Egyptians and the Kushites were pushed even farther south, it remained a place of religious importance. But that importance started to wane around 270 BC, and by the year 23 BC, the city was little more than a ruin, sacked multiple times by the Romans. The site was rediscovered in modern times, but has yet to be fully investigated. Number 1. Lothal. Lothal was another fantastic city left behind by the Indus Valley civilization. It was one of their major trade centers specializing in the exportation of materials, specifically beads, gems, and other precious jewels. The city was built on the banks of the Saraswati River about 4,200 years ago. It was rediscovered in 1954, and excavations have since revealed some of the oldest features of any city on Earth. For example, archaeologists identified what might be the oldest dock in the world. It was connected to the city by an ancient watercourse that stretched all through the Indus Valley civilization cities to the Arabian Sea and to the edge of the Kutch Desert. There are only 2 docks that might be older by a few decades, both of which are in Egypt on the Red Sea. Another impressive aspect of the city was its water system. There are still ancient wells in almost perfect condition that were used by the people of Lothal to pull water out of the earth. The wells are dry now, but their shells still remain even after 4 millennia. Thanks for watching! Which of these amazing rediscovered cities would you like to have seen in its prime? Let me know in the comments below, and remember to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. See you later! Bye!